Bad cards. You hear about bad cards all the time. This card is bad, terrible, trash, garbage, and my personal favorite, unsightly. But what do we mean when we label a card as bad? Are all bad cards the same level of bad? And are different cards deemed bad by different people? A large part of deck building is the ability to identify potent and utile effects that can be combined to form the sturdy backbone of our strategy. The last thing you want is a turd in your otherwise perfect bouquet, and this guide will help you to discern and filter through the garbage for gemstones. To begin with, bad is an umbrella term that could encompass any of the following symptoms: a poor cost-effect ratio, unrealistic summoning or activation conditions, heavy restrictions, or it's simply outclassed. Poor cost-effect ratio, the investment outweighs the outcome. There is no official consensus on the exact point at which an effect becomes worth it, as it is to a large degree determined by contextual factors, like archetype if it applies, or the deck and card that's being used with. It's not to say there's no objective measure of a card's usefulness, but it's important to realize you need to take other factors into account. An effect veiler in Noble Knights or Crystal Beasts is not the same thing as an effect veiler in Prophecy or Blue Eyes. Maximize the card's potential. An effect veiler has the bonus of being backed by a stack of spellcaster-specific support in Prophecy, while in Blue Eyes it is both searchable and can be used as a synchro material, a role it very rarely plays. In Crystal Beast or Noble Knights, however, at best, it's an ill-advised form of shoehorning some form of effect negation into a deck with occupied spell and trap zones. Some effects are clear-cut into definitely worth it or definitely not. The rest fall into a gray area where the argument could be made for both sides. If you currently lack the inner scale that weighs the cost against the effect, worry not. That will come with time, and even after that, it will change. Cards you previously thought were good may lose their appeal. Conversely, you may pull a complete 180 on your attitude towards a card you can't believe you used to think was utterly worthless. One thing's for certain, your judgment will improve. Popular cards are usually good. Disgustingly so. However, not all good cards are popular. A lot of cards that at first glance appear to be underwhelming may have some important function within their archetype that's being overlooked, or a niche role they can fill that is yet to be identified. After all, not all decks are the same, so why should the value of the cards be judged by the same universal yardstick, even if it is a good general indicator? Take effect negation, for example. If there was only one good form of effect negation, we'd only need the one card. Why do we have so many choices? Why do we have infinite impermanence? Actually, why do we have infinite impermanence? Breakthrough skill, fiendish chain, memory loss, lost wind, power sink stone, skill drain. The list goes on, and that's just in traps alone. They're not improved iterations of the same card either. They're all different and unique, because they are for different situations, although there is a large area where they overlap. Remember, Konami doesn't make cards for no reason. Anymore. Most of the time. Try to understand why they made something that way. What are they trying to tell you? The same cards come in and out of the meta, while their effects remain the same. Why? Because the situation where that card is useful is becoming more common. The situation has changed, not the card. The card has always been good. Its use is just now becoming more widespread. The meta, like many things, contains a very small proportion of the cards that see the majority of the play, because they're so good. That just doesn't sit right with me. A bountiful ocean of cards being ignored, simply because no one wishes to find a use for them, because they don't win as much, or aren't as easy to play. To paraphrase a great dead guy, a fly should be handled with fly spray, not a rocket launcher. Personally, I belong to the fly spray faction. The issue arises when, as I did when I first started playing, a new player seeks advice from someone they've decided is more experienced than they are. A lot of this advice comes from competitive players who, as we've mentioned, have a comparatively restricted card list due to their objective, winning as often as possible. The advice they impart will reflect this, and the new player may come away with the belief that the large majority of the card corpus is unusable, as I first did. That simply isn't true. And in case anyone says winning is everyone's objective, I would argue that's not necessarily true. I would say that for some, the manner in which you win is just as, if not more important than the win itself. For some cards, the situation in which they can be useful, or even activated, very rarely, if ever, arises. We as players can do as much as we can to build around them, but sometimes it might feel like trying to fit a goldfish into a shot glass. Nigh impossible. There is only so much we can do for Zushin the Sleeping Giant. A card is live when its activation conditions are met. Competitive play favors cards that are live as soon as possible, one of the reasons that traps aren't prioritized as highly as monsters and spells, because they can usually only be activated on the following turn. If a card is very rarely live, then the chance to use its effect is low, even if it's searchable, and if it's not, then it's even lower. It would make logical sense to replace that card with a card whose activation is more likely. A card that's live more often than it is dead in your hand. It makes no sense to include a card in your deck that can't be played. Heavy restrictions that apply even after the card has been activated may dissuade you from using it even further. The most common type of restriction is summoning restriction. You can only summon monsters of a certain type, or have something in their name, and things to that effect. That's the type of stuff that keeps an archetype to itself. But within that structure, you can barely feel the restriction at all. One of, but not the only reason why Pot of Duality is rarely seen nowadays, is because the user is barred from special summoning. Special summoning, the crutch against which all decks lean. Or Ties of Brethren, that forbids the user from summoning all but 2 level 4 or lower monsters that you can't turn into anything else, and you can't attack with. There are very few decks that are undeterred by the restriction and cost enough to play this card. Counter Fairies and Magnet Warriors come to mind. Finally, why play a card when a better version of it exists? There aren't many examples of a card effect strictly being superior to another one effect-wise, but there are some examples in spell and trap destruction. For example, it's very difficult to argue the case for using Twister over Mystical Space Typhoon. Both are quick play spells. One requires 500 life points and can only destroy face-up spell or traps. The other has no cost and can destroy spell or traps, face-up or otherwise. Does Twister's cost-effect ratio make it a bad card? I would say no. 500 life points seems like a perfectly reasonable cost to destroy a spell and trap, especially considering Unending Nightmare's cost is twice that. The spell and traps that are affecting you are also face-up, so those are the ones you most likely want to get rid of. Additionally, there are no prerequisite activation conditions, other than a target be present, and it can be on either side of the field. Also, no restrictions apply after the card is activated. In all respects, the card seems fine. But why would you pay 500 life points for something that could be free? And why destroy only face-up spell and traps when you could choose to destroy set cards if the need arises? Twister is a good card, just not good enough. The only time I would ever consider using Twister is if I was playing Archfiends, and my paid life points could trigger Master King Archfiend. That's the only time. See, everything has a home, but at the end of the day, it's your deck, and you choose the cards. Advice, including my own, should be taken with a grain of salt, and measured against your previous understanding. Whether or not you decide to play a card is entirely up to you. And it could be for any number of reasons. Sentimental. A card means a lot to you because the way you came by it was somehow special. The card could be super cool, or super cute, or super gross if you're into that. It could be for no reason at all. You just want to use it. And that's all the reason you need. Familiarize yourself with the card database at your leisure. Uncover buried gold, and show us what we've been missing out on with your new combos and your new deck. Thank you for your time, duelist. Good luck, and have fun. If this video helped you, please consider leaving a like. It lets me know that I'm on the right track. Any and all feedback is appreciated. I am making more of these, so please consider subscribing if this is something that you're looking for. Thank you very much again. Appreciate it. I'm out. Peace.